everyone, I'm Mahesh Krishnan, and it's an honor to host this intergenerational fireside talk show organized by Gender Equity Network South Asia, also known as GENSA. I represent GENSA today and extend a warm welcome to all of you. Today's event, the Youthful Perspectives in Evaluation and Intergenerational Fireside Chat, aims to bring together young evaluators and experienced experts to exchange and share relevance and effectiveness of youth participation in evaluation. Our focus will be on understanding the wins and gaps around youth participation in evaluation and discussing ways to support and promote young evaluators in our networks. So we are privileged to have with us today three distinguished dignitaries who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Nikita Khanna, the Head of Impact and Learning at Restless Development. She leads on the delivery and impact of Restless Development's global strategy, program quality, and documenting and sharing evidence to make case for youth-led development and the importance of shifting power to young people. Dr. Shyam Singh, Professor of Social Sciences and Dean at the Institute of Rural Management, Anand. And finally, Ms. Rajni K. Murthy, a researcher and consultant in gender and development with over 25 years of experience in evaluation, mainstreaming, and research on gender and development. Focusing on agriculture, poverty reduction, health, and SDGs, she has extensive experience with NGOs, national governments, and UN organizations.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm also from IRBA.
Okay. So before we dive into today's session, I'd like to introduce our colleague, Ms. Amrita, who is representing GENSA. She will present a short PPT that shares a bit about GENSA, provides an overview of our discussion topics, and sets the stage for our conversation. In addition, she'll be sharing insights from a short survey we have conducted on youth in evaluation. Amrita, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mahesh. And it's really a great pleasure having all of you here. I'm going to quickly share a little bit as Mahesh was talking about. Can you see my screen?
Yes, Amrita.
Thank you. So just a little bit about who we are and what we do. We are GENSA. We are the Gender and Equity Network South Asia. And we are a special interest group of the community of evaluators South Asia. We are a learning network, and we organize expert lectures, coffee breaks, and some of you who are here have been part of our expert lectures and our coffee breaks. We also engage with youth through webinars, through masterclasses and panels like this. We have about 250 plus members from 7 South Asian countries. Like Mahesh was saying, to set a tone to our discussion today, we had shared a small survey to understand how are you engaged in evaluation processes. And it was open to people who had engaged youth or youth who had engaged in the process. So we can see from these responses, and we have about 19 responses here, that about 90% of the responses said that yes, youth are being engaged. But when we see where are they being engaged, it is largely around the field work, data collection, data analysis processes. So it's a question that emerges, is that the only space that youth can be engaged? And maybe we can discuss that in the fireside chat today. A little bit about what kind of experiences people have had, including youth who have engaged in evaluation. Some people have said that, because youth are young, they are students, they have lower bias in that, and they have a lot of opportunity to explore. People have talked about their digital abilities, talked about how they are innovative, but of course there have also been some areas where they've said that they're great performers, but maybe they could improve their ownership of work and act more as a team player. So maybe some areas of improvement, some areas of great, participation. So on that note, I will hand it back to Mahesh again, and just that he can start this conversation with a few questions and just fire up the fireside chat. Over to you, Mahesh.
Thanks, Amrita. So next we'll be moving on to the fireside chat. And as a first step, I'll be posing a trigger question and then we can discuss more on it. So the first question is on like how are the different ways in which you have engaged the youth in evaluations. So now the floor is open to the speakers to elaborate on it.
You can invite someone. Maybe Nikita can start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, perfect. So I'll talk about one of the ways which has been kind of useful for the organization that I work with, which is justice development. It's not a process that was kind of launched in mind keeping just evaluations, but it was kind of thought as one of the ways in which young people could be meaningfully engaged in all steps of a program, intervention, activity, thing, whatever you want to call it. And it's kind of proved useful for us, so I'll share that with the group. What we do is that for any program, be it a program that's across multiple countries or even a program within country, we try and have a component of what we call as a youth advisory board or a youth steering committee. You can call it whatever you want, but it's basically a group of sort of diverse young people from the communities where the project is being implemented. So if it's a multi-country project, you will try and make sure that you have at least one representation from each country. And this group kind of serves as a bouncing board, an accountability mechanism for the staff who is kind of leading the project. And this basically involves being part of not just decision making, but also different processes that kind of underpin the project, including evaluation. So what we've kind of done is that, and I think one of the things that has been important is that you kind of really need to consider this setting up of this youth advisory board or committee as something that has to be laid out at the outset. It can't be an afterthought. So you need to kind of really factor it into your program budget before you kind of send it to your donor to be like, this is a group that you will have to that we want to bring in because it will bring in that fresh perspective. It will make sure that we are accountable to the young people that we are working with. We're going to make sure that the project is accountable to the young people that it's working with. So that's one thing that happens. And what this group does is that it depends again on the lifetime of the project. If it's like a multi-year project, the group kind of meets quarterly, deliberates on key decisions, and once the time has come for the evaluation, this group kind of is also one that works with whoever is the learning partner that has been brought on, makes sure that what are the evaluation objectives, are they in line with the kind of change or impact that young people want to see. They kind of help in setting up the objectives, the questions, kind of validating the data tools, making sure that they are part of some bits of the data collection process. Some of them are also keen on doing data collection. So they might also say that, okay, if it's in our country, we can actually lead this process ourselves. So this is just one of, I think, the ways that we found to be useful. But what we have really realized is that compensation and support is very important throughout this. So you can't just expect people to do this on a voluntary basis for you. You have to pay them well. For whatever time that they're committing to you. You have to make sure that you are there to support them, because I think one of the things that we as a sector are also kind of struggling with is that we want to involve young people, but we don't realize how time intensive and resource intensive it can be. So making sure that your project timeline, your evaluation timeline really accounts for the fact that you might need to actually factor in some extra time to be able to support that group, to take the kind of, lead the kind of process that you're envisioning it to be. So yeah, I'm going to stop here and maybe let Ranjani and Dr. Sham add.
Would you like to go first or?
No, please, Ranjani, please you go ahead.
Yeah, no, G. Ranjani. I just want to say with regard to youth engagement that there is a scale. in which, in my years of experience in evaluation, we have engaged with the youth. One is very simple. As a informant, group participants, you're meeting them. Okay. The second is the shadowing role, that they come into the evaluation, they build their capacity through shadowing you, and and it may involve them giving their recommendations, their findings. As part of shadowing, something very innovative is that the NGO in Jharkhand had appointed a women spy, youth. Yeah, the spy's role was to give independent assessment of the progress, while the men and adolescent boys gave their own assessment of the changes which had happened due to work on masculinity. This spy would turn up saying, look, they are not sharing the work burden, they're helping a little bit. So, don't believe totally what the men and fathers are saying. So that role, which was quite unusual, which I've not seen anywhere else in evaluation and monitoring, was quite unique. The third role is with regard to data, which you have said. Using GIS, the youth come in. Using remote sensing, the youth come in. Okay, so in the evaluation, but they don't play a larger role. A third role is in giving feedback on findings and recommendations. And the fifth is agency, where the youth, like what Nikita pointed out, is play a larger role in terms of co-designing the evaluation, in terms of methodology and findings. Here, I want to give an example of our work with sports coaches who were in the age group of 21 to 25. They were the youth, and they were trained to do the evaluation. Yeah, we had a field testing, we developed methodologies, and we did a small sample. They did the huge one. So they analyzed. Yeah, and they pointed out what was wrong in our assumptions too. What were the other factors? For example, we thought some of the positive changes, like confidence to go with the Gram Sabha, etc., was due to the program. But they pointed out how TV programs played a role. Yeah, how the government had its own programs. So so they had a different lens on where progress had been made or what progress. So I think the youth participation can be viewed in a scale, and the challenge is, how do we involve youth as agents in evaluation as a principle in itself, and to strengthen the evaluation, both. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Rajni. So now moving on to Dr. Shyam Singh.
Yes, thank you, Mahesh. I mean, I have a limited, usually I see a limited role in terms of engaging youth with evaluation. I teach a course on monitoring and evaluation, and have been teaching this for the last 8 years to PGDM students at IRMA. What I involve with when I teach the course, basically the great contribution that they make is they ask uncomfortable questions. They challenge every bit of what we tell them, what evaluation is, how it should be done, what are the different perspectives. I think that brings, not only that ensure their participation, but also brings a lot of challenging, a task and question to me to solve going ahead. As part of the course, I give them live projects. I bring projects from different organizations. They do assignment, they submit to the organization, I evaluate. And I think it's also, one of the most important learning that I have kind of come across, when somebody who has been hired by Amul to really make sure that the delivery of milk happens, and the procurement happens and the marketing happens, asked me questions about the evaluation, not necessarily any development intervention or any kinds of the project, But person will ask me how the same principles, the same perspective can be applied when I ask why a person has to go 1 kilometer to pour milk in a dairy cooperatives. Now, I think this brings me a challenge in terms of, building and rebuilding the course that I teach. And those uncomfortable questions actually pose every year a serious challenge to me to deliver the course. But that is how I have been able to, make them kind of empowered, strengthened. I feel empowered when they ask these questions, and I try and finding answers. So I think that is how I have been engaging with students for last 8 years, teaching same course, although with new content every time, because they do ask very uncomfortable questions every year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shyam, and thank you all the speakers. That was a very insightful uh, session. Now, I would like to move on to the next trigger question. So now, from the insights from the short survey which Amrita has showed in her PPT, it looks like we engage youth mainly for data collection and analysis work. So what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, can I start now? Let's reverse the.
Yes, yeah. Let's reverse the order.
All right. Yes, I think I see it very differently in the sense, if we have things to engage with them, we can engage, we should engage. Now, I find this very challenging, that do we have a fresh perspective and ideas to engage with youth? It's not that we engage them in a data collection, we engage, ask them to go and visit a village and come back with some, insights. Evaluation as a sector, I mean, I would like to go even beyond that, saying evaluation as a discipline, which not many people agree with me, but I do have a hope that after, some point of time, it emerges as a discipline. We need to have a fresh ideas, fresh perspective to really engage with them. Now, my experience in this realm, the last 10 years or 11 years working in the evaluation sector, I'm sorry, it may be a little bit provocative, but we seniors, old timers, more often we engage in the discussion with the qual and quant. What is gold standard? What is silver standard? What is not? And I believe we really do not, we are not in position to offer something new where they can actually think about evaluative mindset, ideas, philosophy that they bring into evaluation rather than toolkits and methods. So my idea has been till now that evaluation we present to youth as a toolkit. You do this, that is how the theory of change can be, but no, very rarely people tell what the theory of change has to do with the philosophy of the intervention, at the same time, philosophy of the evaluation as an exercise. So I think yes, it needs to go beyond the data collection for sure. Data collection is just a very minor activities. But are we ready to offer fresh perspective? They, as I said, they do ask uncomfortable question. We cannot all the time solve their queries. Offering same again and again the similar kinds of answer that we have when it comes to monitoring and evaluations. My observation is, my experience is, since we are not engaging with evaluation at the level of the philosophy, at the level of the construct, it's very difficult to engage with them with the fresh ideas or perspective. Thank you.
I feel that yes, I agree very much that they're being used for efficiency reason. That is, they're a cheap bet to collect the data, yeah, and the youth, and we will use them. So how to strengthen it from instrumental to seeing the value addition they can bring to evaluation and empowerment. So 3 reasons: efficiency, value addition, and youth empowerment. We need to look at the last 2 bit more. And I just want to give a few examples where, apart from that NAS, for example, when I was in Moldova, here we were one German, one Indian, and one person from a European country, another European country. We were leading the evaluation and we're looking at the intervention with youth. And we had planned we'll meet this many women, this many men. And the men were much lower. And the reality emerged from a youth member, national consultant. And this is another hierarchy to be broken. International consultant and the national consultant will be a youth, and translation or whatever service. And he said, look, ma'am, the women are in Western Europe earning money for their family because there's no employment. Yeah. So that was a way where the youth in the evaluation contributed value addition to the team's knowledge. Yeah. And to their own empowerment, I want to give the example of South Asia Poverty Alleviation Program in Andhra, where we trained a set of people, young people, to do the evaluation, while we also did some FGDs and various participatory methods. And some of them grew in the organization, some went on to assume higher roles in other NGOs. So can their agency be strengthened to play larger roles? And their insights were very, very different. For example, here were adolescent boys monitoring, violence against women in fairs, their village. And these adolescent boys had been trained, but youth, young, whatever. But what was this thing that they will protect their girls? That was their attitude. So this was brought in by the youth member, a critique of, so their fresh perspective and the empowerment. I think both are important. And we cannot speak of the youth as one category. The National Youth Policy is 15 to 29 years. That's a very broad spectrum. Yeah. If we were to use, the more younger range of people, it can only be for information collection or whatever. It is, a slightly more mature set which can contribute and assume agency. And the ethics of using children below 18 is also something which we have to examine. And whether they are Dalits, whether they are, LGBTIQ, whether they are minorities, who is the youth? I think this is a question which is also to be examined.
Thank you, Rajni. Let's move on to Nikita.
So I'll echo a little bit of what both Ranjani and Dr. Shyam said, that it's easy to involve young people in processes like data collection because, as Ranjani clearly pointed out, it's cheaper. It's also something that helps you kind of tick mark that box that says that you have engaged young people. And it helps you to, I don't want to use the term guilt wash, but it's kind of like that. You want to tell yourself that, okay, I've done this, which is great. And now we can just move on and let quote unquote more seasoned evaluators, take on the charge and let them make sense of of the information that young people have probably generated. One of the reasons that I think I have kind of seen, and it's always used a number of times, is that young people are better positioned to get insights from their peers because you have that peer-to-peer relationship. You can kind of ask questions in a way that maybe, say, somebody older might not be able to ask, and you might be able to get that information. And you'll get that nuance that you're looking for. But if we want to make that shift, and we just don't want to have young people as just data collectors, or just as somebody who is, there to maybe support you in the analysis process, you need to be very clear about why you want to do this. There needs to be that commitment from the organization that is commissioning the evaluation that they want to see or get something, or try just or just to invest that time to be able to kind of, work with young people in a way that they can also lead the evaluation process. Because as I said before, it is time and resource intensive. You cannot just expect to have a young person leading an evaluation and just let them be. You need to be there to support them. So I think that commitment from the organization, a willingness across the organization to learn or change or be even open to what maybe that young evaluator might bring to the table is very important. And I think that's where we somehow are still not comfortable. Like, we don't want people to challenge what we already know, or people who have been doing this for long just don't want that kind of challenging to happen. So you need to be open. You need to be able to accept the fact that you'll have to unlearn if you want to get something else out of, involving young people in evaluation. And I think it's not something that can happen overnight, but you need to start where you can and do what you can. Maybe you'll not be able to involve young people in everything all at once, but you can still look for opportunities. You can still look for spaces that kind of build on your existing activities and practices. You can try and open up conversations with young people where their perspectives might strengthen your understanding. You can try and involve them in monitoring processes, which is just not data collection. So you can kind of try and, start with these things. And maybe once you have that pool identified, you might have actually created, somebody who could actually lead your evaluation the next time. So I think that's what I would like to add to the question that you raised, Mahesh. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikita.
I just want to say that there is a power hierarchy in every evaluation, between the team leader and team members. So rarely are youth put as team leaders. So maybe in some exceptions that may be seen, but when they are put as a team member, a lot of their ideas gets filtered. They cannot, some may be taken, some may not be taken. So it is a very good practice to get their input separately in writing, in design, on findings, on recommendations, and it should be annexed so that it is transparent which of their recommendations, findings, or inputs into the evaluation has been ignored, what has been taken into account. Otherwise, it can just be lip service having them.
Thank you, Rajini. So I would like to reflect on what all of you have said. So I would like to share some of my experience. So I studied Masters in Public Policy from the National Law School. So this particular course, there is a strong foundation. In the starting of the course, they give a strong foundation on different philosophy and everything, and then we move on to the technical aspects of policy making, including evaluation. So now, my fellow students, my fellow classmates, they would always demand for elective courses that are more focused on technical aspects rather than the other one. And some of them are very brilliant people. When we meet outside, they have a lot of insights to share, but they don't want to apply that to the work they do because they think that the market demand is more favoring the technical skills rather than the fresh perspectives, which Dr. Shyam has said, and how you have said, Rajini has said. So I think this is the thing. The organizations must make it more clear that the fresh perspectives should come in. So this is what I think. Yes. And Alpakshi has posed another question in the chat. So what is the kind of investment in terms of skill development that is required for youth development?
Mahesh,
Dr. Shyam, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I can definitely. But Mahesh, you can probably mention who you want to speak first. So it becomes easy.
Oh, yeah, you can go ahead.
So in terms of investment, I have an answer in a very abstract way. I mean, of course, probably Nikita can answer in terms of the, or others can answer because I have not engaged with them in terms of any doing project. I have definitely guided the assignments, etc. So I think one of the investment that I think is that we have to let some of our power go away when we engage with youth. I mean, that's to me is an investment that I think is very difficult to make. For example, when one of my student group was working with, I will not name it, one of the national level NGO on one of the assignment as part of the course. The three students came up with a very unconventional idea of monitoring and evaluation, which was very difficult for the team at the NGO to really accept that how this can go away when the set standards and procedures of MNE are these. The students were putting forward some of the views that no, well, these are the set standards. These are in fact taught by my professor, but I think understanding the gender development, the making inroads into the community for getting their trust, earning the trust, accumulating social capital. These could be ways, and they were more subjective. They were not biased, but they were very subjective. Probably they were able to understand the contextual, sensitivity. I think, and I thought, and that is very important, that, well, it may be some monetary investment that one has to make, but for me, we have to set some of the sense of power and sense of, control away when we are engaging with the youth evaluators. Sometimes they go wrong. I mean, that's fine. Everybody, all of us go wrong. I mean, there's nothing wrong in messing up one of the assignment, and then your commissioning agencies really take you to task. We have gone through multiple times those experiences. At the same time, I think respecting what subjectiveness they are bringing in, respecting what newness they are bringing in, we may not like that. We might need to give them a little bit of space. And that's the biggest investment that I consider that we need to make.
I think it's both investment and also acknowledging their wisdom. Yeah, intergenerational learning. We are also learning from them. They may not know everything, but as he said, neither do we. So how do we balance between that building their capacity and all that, and acknowledging that they know and what we are going to learn from them?
Just add on to what both of them have already said. Firstly, resources, financial resources, very important. If you don't have that charted out at the outset, you'll not be able to add it later. Like it can't be an afterthought. So that is something that is really important. And then secondly, I think there's no one size fits all kind of approach, because it will depend on the kind of project that you are evaluating, the kind of young people that you might want to involve in that process. Everybody will come with a different level of understanding, with a different level of expertise. So being kind of conscious about the fact that there will be those differences, and it will need the investment in terms of not just money, but also you having to deal with different levels of understanding that young people might have in your group that is probably leading the evaluation. If I go back to sort of my experience and where I think young people have majorly needed more support, firstly, it's been, I've realized they catch up on the data collection bits very quickly, because they kind of see it more as a conversation that they're having with their peers, and not essentially sitting with a huge quantitative survey and trying to do that check mark like you see like happening in the census. So they see a lot of that. And they're good at getting those kinds of stories out. But where they feel a little stuck is when the time comes for the analysis bit. Like you can talk to them about the fact that, yes, we need to do thematic analysis. It's easy to say that we need to do thematic analysis and we need to identify common themes. But when you are dealing with so much information, how do you kind of support that group of young evaluators to really understand how do you even bring out something like a theme? What is a theme? How do you package it in a way that would make sense? So I think that's where they have a bit of, that's where we've had to support them a lot more. I think somewhere, even when we look at the processes before the data collection, people giving feedback on, let's say, the tools. So you realize that people will give feedback on almost everything, but you can't change everything. So then you need to come to that dialogue that this is a change that we can do, this is a change we cannot do because it doesn't align with the assumptions in the theory of change. So you have to explain that bit as well. So I think those are some of the areas where we've had to like kind of really support young people. But I won't say that even we as an organization have completely let go of, well, the control on the evaluation process. Yes, we're trying to build capacities of young people so that they are able to take it on, but we recognize that there is a long way to go before that can also happen.
To this, group, I have a dream, which is that youth organizations are there in some villages there are not. Already there are existing as per youth policy, there are supposed to be. Now, looking beyond project evaluation and talking about evaluation of government programs or progress on some youth SDG indicators, whether we can build capacity of federated youth organizations at district or block or panchayat level to show, how an evaluation of a government program or SDG or anything you can take can be done, CEDA or Beijing or whatever it is. So that would be very good because that youth organization will pass it on to the next, people coming on board in the youth organization. So from a sustainability and from, looking beyond project, a larger vision, if there are organizations here, IRMA is here, whether something along those lines can be thought of.
I'll just add to what the question about the investment, because I remember few instances where the government and the government of Gujarat and certain central ministries wanted to give the projects, and they say, you please do it with a low budget. Involve your students. You don't need money. Well, they are human beings. You send them to field. They need food. They need a proper transportation, and they are not cheap labor. So I think we need to have we need to figure out even the financial investment as well if you are engaging with youth. For example, various organizations may have a policy, which I understand they need to have certain hierarchy, etc. But okay, if somebody above manager can fly, but then if they are youth, the students, so they can take a bus and train go. But they can accumulate a new experience, 1 or 2 in that process. But or somebody can get 1,000 rupees for lunch or dinner, but these guys can manage in 200 rupees. I mean, the point is, I don't think they have a lesser hunger than us, and they eat less. I find it very bizarre sometimes. So I think in terms of the investment, when we actually involve youth for the skill development, we need to have enough resources. I mean, we need to really build that in our budget, or government, particularly departments and ministries coming in, that you involve your students and do it in 1 lakh, 2 lakh or free. I mean, I said no multiple times, but it's sometimes very difficult to say no, but wherever we cannot say no, but it doesn't mean that we have to be. So the point that I think Nikita was mentioning, that yes, we do need some investment if we engage students, least for the data collection. I mean, we do need to have a bigger heart when we engage them in the design of the intervention or evaluation. But even if we use for the data collection, we need to have investment. So how much it would be depends on the team size, etc. In acceptance of the commissioning agency, whether they would really like so many youth, multiple 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 in the exercise. Otherwise, they think it is not a standard evaluation, because only youth is, only new students are doing or whatever. So it's not easy, but I think when it comes to investment, we should not be miser. If we have resources, we need to put in order to enable them to go really meaningfully, dignified way, attend the field, understand, come back. That's what I wanted to share. Yeah.
And sorry, just to add to this, I think getting investment is easier said than done, because you might put a whole line item in your budget about this, but if your funder or your donor is not bought into that idea, there's a risk that it might just get cancelled out, and then you're back to square one. So it's it's kind of also something that you might be in a situation where your donor is kind of like bought into the idea that yes, we need meaningful youth engagement in all processes. So it's easier to get that money out from them. But if you have more, let's say, conventional or traditional donors who don't understand why this is important, they'll just be like, why don't you just put like a blanket amount of X lakhs and just get like an agency to do it? Why do you need to go into this whole process of capacitating young evaluators? Like I don't want to pay for that. So that's also, I think, a point where organizations struggle with, which is also why you don't see young people being involved in processes that are maybe, let's say, not just data collection.
Would any of the speakers like to add more? Or shall we move on to opening the floor to the audience?
I just wanted to know that has it been easy to bring girls, young women into evaluation, Nikita, and or has it been mainly Sham, or has it been mainly young men who have come in?
I think if I'm not really
Mm.
biased, girls do better job. That is my experience working with.
Are they coming in numbers?
Yes,
That
they
is
do.
like
They do, definitely.
equal numbers.
Okay, so if you ask me, then of course it's a kind of different problem, because it depends on the composition of my class, which is always, currently we are getting 36, 30 or max 40% girls in the program. But when we make the group, and I usually give them chance to decide whether they want to do an assignment with, with somebody else. For example, organization that you represent, just for example, say, or they want to just me to give them a case and do it at home. I have seen that more often boys remains at, sir, de dijiye, ghar mein kar lenge. They come out and say, no, I'll call them, I'll sit with them online meeting, I'll get the data, I'll analyze, I'll prepare the report. So in that way, I think I found girls more forthcoming in terms of understanding, posing questions, learning. Otherwise, conventional way, this is depends on, for me, the batch size and how the gender representation in the batch.
Nikita?
Um,
Sorry,
I'll not be able
Mahesh.
to I'll not be able to say from the Indian experience because I haven't led processes here, but we have programs which are active in African countries where predominantly the group is kind of leaning more towards young women. So that's been something that has been that you observed there. But this whole concept of having, and this kind of ties back to what I started with, because the piloting that we're doing with this youth advisory board, youth steering group, is largely in those spaces. We haven't actually tried it in India yet, so we don't know what's going to happen. But in India, when we've had data collector groups, and that has been the level where we've involved young people in evaluations. It's not been that difficult, to be honest, to get young women, but I do recognize that it's not the most diverse cohort of young women. You kind of end up with those who have been exposed to some kind of education, are a little more outspoken, so they'll quickly sort of, jump into and be like, yes, we want to do this. And because we work through a lot of volunteers, it's usually friends of them. When we have to get data collected, it's usually their friends who will sign up. So it's kind of like based on that dynamic a little bit as well.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Hi. So thank you all the speakers. Now we get into our audience interaction session. So we request the audience to raise any questions if you have any. Yeah. You can also post your questions on the chat.
I have a question, Mahesh,
Yes,
which I
yes, go
posted
ahead.
on the chat,
Okay.
which is, making how do we plan for a increased, skill development of our young evaluators? Because, how do we match what they want in their expectations to be included in major decision making or being involved in the more strategic parts of evaluation and the more technocratic parts. So for me, this particular uh, bridge is something that I have grappled with a lot. And the second one is how do we ensure continuity of interest, because there I find a lot of interest in the beginning, but it doesn't necessarily sustain, towards towards the end. So I'm not sure if there is something we can do or what we could do.
Sonalji, I have a small doubt. So the continued interest of who?
Youth.
Okay.
Of the
Okay.
youth.
Okay.
Sonal, I've just come back from, evaluation of Devadasi and Dalit girls empowerment, and they finished till 12th class education or whatever. And subsequently, they have helped in some evaluations, some capacity has been built, but the dreams are, I'm talking about rural areas. Their dreams are things like getting into Asim Premji, because they have been exposed to all this in the evaluation, university, but they don't know English. So there are those. So sometime, we need to be very clear how we're going to take them forward. So the youth, very clearly, these young Dalit women talked about need for English, computer training, and with regard to, if they want, then only they can get into these development spaces, and go to evaluation, graduate from data collection to higher level. So this is one of the challenges, especially in rural areas. Then if they don't get, they get into garment industry, something else.
So I think, the question that Sonalji you asked, it's very important questions, particularly looking at the evaluation space today. If you see, and I think others may have a similar view or you can disagree with me, but my observation is that you more often find youth from urban area and well-trained. I think that's what the Ranjiji was saying, that we have to make sure that evaluation is part of mainstream education. No matter whether you're urban or rural, it has to be in one way or other integrated with your education. Otherwise, what happens is The girls like these, they come out and then they don't know what to do. They don't have English, now, there has been some effort in order to localize these evaluation, the capacity building exercise. For example, in a village, you have a social auditors, you have, the local champions who do ask questions in Gram Sabha. You have Bal Mitras. You have. My point is that we need to localize the whole capacity building effort, and which should be there in the village, where they can understand not evaluation as a discipline or not as a skill set, but as a mindset. I mean, they should know how to ask questions. Girls should know, boys should know how to ask questions from the headmaster of the school. Why there's no toilet, water in the toilet? They can ask questions from the sarpanch. Why there is no, street where they go to the school and still. My point is, if we localize it and we plan that way, mainstream, put it, or make it a part of the mainstream education, I think it does things. It facilitates even the rural, youth and girls to come forward and actually get that knowledge. Second is this is about the government and the education system. The organization like us, like JINSA, like the organization that Nikita belongs, or all of us, we have a mentoring program. Do we have a mentoring? Do we do a kind of mentoring program? Do we have a plan of action where actually, every year we train at least 10 to 12 students or youth? Dropout, maybe. Why students all the time graduate or postgraduate? Maybe 10th or 12th dropout. Can we actually, give them a little bit of basic training in terms of at least to ensure the basic delivery of services around their house? Is evaluator not necessarily we are talking about consultant? I mean, most of it for a long time we have been thinking about evaluator means consultant. No, evaluator to me means anybody in any space can evaluate things, can ask questions, can ensure that their rights are, protected. So I think it's a bigger design. It's a bigger aspect. It has a big ask in terms of the resource and our commitment. So mentoring can be done. Third and last is ideation process, which I have talked a little bit earlier also. How many of us we engage the youth in the ideation of whole evaluation exercise? I mean, that is where the ownership also comes. That is where the empowerment and agency issues also, get addressed. So if these are three things, for example, I always tell, and one of the government I was meeting, I was telling them, which of course they don't agree with me, but I was telling them, can you hire YPs, young evaluators, young professionals, not to, take file from one table to another, not to make PPTs for the directors of the department, but actually get engaged in terms of strategy, in terms of, making plans, in terms of figuring out the theory of change. And that would be the process where they are involved in ideation, at the level of ideation of the whole evaluation design. So there are three levels which I talked about. I think these are important. Local at the village level, mentoring some of the organizations like us can do. Third is, can we also involve them in very, early level, basic level of ideation of any intervention or project.
I
To add
was
very
also,
quickly to that.
sorry.
Ranjini, go on. Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to add very quickly to what Shyam was saying of thinking whether SIRDs could, some course with regard to youth and evaluation involving field, it could be institutionalized with intersectional perspective, of course, but if something like that could be done, it would be wonderful.
I was just going to add that I think it's also about, and this is in the short term, not about the long term aspects that both Ranjini and Dr. Sharma are saying, but it's also important that if you do get young people into your initiative in any capacity, it's important to be clear to them as to what they'll get out of it. So a lot of times, if you say that, yes, you'll probably develop some kind of research skills or some kind of analysis skills, and making sure that they understand how that could actually help them later. Perhaps maybe not directly at, say, a college level, but they are definitely skills that they could use later, put on their CV, probably get into a think tank or a research organization. So that communication is important as to why their contribution in this process and what will it give them, apart from other skills like just the general confidence that they might get in, conducting themselves in the public sphere.
I think sorry, it's not really linked to Nikita, but more Shyam's point. I just feel that, youth also require development perspective and gender intersectionality. So that kind of lens, not just evaluation capacity building, and that is something which we need to keep in mind.
Last very important question some student ask me, and they do ask every year, and I will definitely tell you. They ask, if I don't go to the evaluation sector, will I get job? Now, that's a bigger question for youth. If they don't go to evaluation as evaluator or as a consultant, all the capacity building and skill development, does that enable them to get non-evaluation, evaluative or evaluation job? Answer that I don't have. I mean, I just, tell them I don't know. I mean, mostly no, you won't get. If you are getting skills in that, that's where your space is. And that's where the question comes in, then that's where all hell breaks, why we should do this then. If I am doing sociology, if I'm doing this, then I have a set of jobs. If I'm doing economics, I can go to here, I can go to there. I can work with Reliance as an analyst. At the same time, I can go and join Indian Economic Services. Does this skill set that we are providing them, asking them to devote their time and probably get skillful, enable them to change the sector and get jobs somewhere else? This has also been a very practical issue I confront every year when I teach students. So I think that is where I was talking about, we need to be a discipline rather than just a toolkit, because if you are a discipline, we can enable them to go any sector, any job. Why only evaluation? Why only in development sector? So I think that is another problem when we talk about the skill development, when we talk about training them. What is the future for them? What is the guarantee? And youth drew all these questions today. Tell me where the job is for me. Why should I invest my time, etc. So I think that is also one of the factor, particularly answering to Sonalji's question about how we should be kind of planning in terms of the skill set that we want to give them, how we should be engaging with them.
Thanks a lot. I think there is a lot that we can do on this. Very practical things from the perspective of youth. I think we often look at it from our perspective, what we can provide. But this is actually talking from their point of view, what are their concerns and what value does all of this bring to their own lives. And I really like the idea that why should it be so narrowly on evaluation? Talk about it, how it can be expanded to other fields, and the perspective building. This is an opportunity to create that sort of awareness, that Ranjani was talking about and Nikita was saying, how to bring that awareness aside from, about what is, diversity and inclusion. That is an opportunity. Otherwise, where will we talk about these issues? So actually thinking about evaluation in a very broad sense, as you were saying, Shyam, it's so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonalji. So our session is about to end.
1 second.
Oh,
I'm wondering, posing before Sonal and the Gensa team, whether they can run a course for youth on gender and evaluation to begin with in India, then expanding to South Asia. Annual course.
Sonalji may not be in position to say yes right now. Or I think she is in that direction.
Yes. Food for thought. Food for thought.
Yeah. And actually, why just evaluation is a good question. You can't just bring them in evaluation stage. It has to be from, project planning, monitoring, evaluation, that cycle. And if my dream is true, also, government program monitoring, whatever. Sorry, Mahesh, I interrupted you.
No worries. No worries. So I would like before ending the session, I would like to add something. So Dr. Shyam Singh has talked about the job opportunities of after learning evaluation, right? So I would like to share some insight which I have found helpful. So there are many exciting fields where the evaluation, the framework, toolkit, and the logic of evaluation can be applied. And one such sector is political consultancy. These are some of the interesting sectors where the evaluation template can be applied. Yes, so before ending the session, I thank you to all the wonderful speakers for sharing your insights and experiences. And big thanks to our audience. Let's stay connected and continue these important conversations, as well as supporting and promoting the inclusion of youth evaluators in our networks. Have a great evening.
Thank you for involving us. It has been wonderful listening to diverse voices. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mahesh, and thanks all those who have coordinated. Thank you.